Welcome. You are listening to Caregiving Secrets with Deborah Greenhut. If you are a family caregiver or expect to be one, and you want to maintain your well-being while caring, then you are in the right place. We need to invent and reinvent family care, and together we're going to do it. My big idea is rational caregiving, and my motto is, let your brain lead your heart. Caregiving Secrets, because friends don't let friends be caregivers alone. Let's do this. Welcome, everyone. I'm excited today to have as my guest George Ackerman, who wears a lot of hats. He's a very multi-talented, multi-occupied person who also has time, a lot of time, dedicates himself to finding a cure for Parkinson's. So, George, I want to welcome you to the program. Would you like to say a few words about yourself?
Yeah, I want to thank you and your audience for the time. I was excited to have this discussion. Anytime I can help advocate for a cure, it really means the world to me and so many battling the disease, but also in memory, unfortunately, of those we've lost, like my mother, due to Parkinson's disease. A little bit about myself. I'm a police officer and lawyer in Florida. My PhD is in criminal justice, and I'm an author. I've published several books lately on Parkinson's disease, just for awareness. All the money is donated directly to different organizations like the Michael J. Fox Foundation. And I've found there's some topics maybe we'll get to that aren't being touched on that I thought were very critical. So that's why we did that. And we started together for Sharon.com in memory of my mother. I was hoping to get 2 or 3 people to see it about 6 years ago, but we've had over 40,000 visits. So I don't know if that's because of the work we're all doing, or unfortunately the disease is growing and more people being diagnosed daily.
I remember when I was growing up, we didn't hear the term very often.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the 50s and 60s, but it's only more recently, you're right, that it has come up. Would you like to tell us a bit about your mom, how all this started?
Yeah, my mother was my best friend. Even now, almost 6 years later, it's not always easy to talk about, but I do this because she had Parkinson's for 15 years, but she passed very young, in my opinion, at 69. And I feel like she lost 15 years of her life alive with Parkinson's, and then 15 likely after she passed due to Parkinson's. So I didn't want her to be forgotten. So that's why we started the website. And unfortunately, I thought some days it's hard because, as you know, in any disease, you advocate. Some nights I don't sleep just posting on social media or just trying to reach one person a day to change the world. But then I see a story a few weeks ago. Currently, we have 1.2 about million people in the U.S., which isn't a lot unless it happens to affect you. And then 10 million people around the world. But there was a statistic in a news story which was shocking, that said in about 15 to 20 years, it's going to go from 1 million people to 20 million. So some days I feel like I'm not doing enough or not doing the right thing, but I feel that through your show and all your viewers, the main goal is that no one is ever alone in this fight. I felt alone. We didn't know all your incredible people like yourself and your audience were out there at the time. I was so busy trying to care for my mother, I couldn't even take a minute to breathe. And then also, my mother didn't even meet someone, shockingly, who had Parkinson's. So we really did feel alone.
That's really a stunning story, and I know that a lot more people are going through it now, although 20 million seems like a huge escalation. To me, I can't even fathom how fast things are changing on that. Before all this happened, what was the main focus of your life?
I think family, work. Again, I actually went to law enforcement and to be a lawyer because I advocated for victims and specifically family members who lost a loved one due to crime. And my dissertation on my PhD was aiding African American mothers in South Florida who lost their loved one due to murder. Because a lot of the time, obviously, sadly, we lose a loved one, but then the families become secondary victims. And I kind of correlate that to the Parkinson's community because there's not enough awareness. And sometimes they're also forgotten by society. And that's why I decided when my mother went through this that I would kind of switch my whole life towards advocacy. But there's a certain point I'm finding now, 6 years later, you get to a point which we discussed earlier, where you kind of don't know what else is left. I've kind of did the website, I've done books, I've done speeches, I've done podcasts, but it's kind of at the point where it's like you can only, you're kind of limited. So hopefully there's others out there that see this and they start joining in and advocating too. Because unless we have everybody in this family towards a cure, we'll be further from it.
Yeah, I can understand there's a little bit of frustration because every day there's a new cause that needs help, and yet the one that you started with is the one that's keeping you passionate and keeping you focused. So,
Yeah, the shocking thing, which is again, I'm not really here to plug books and things, but it just happened. I wrote this just last year, and it's called "An Empty Seat at the Table." And why I wrote it is the frustration and struggles with awareness. Like a lot of people don't talk about the bad stuff or the negative side because everyone we know we want to be positive, but doing this was not always easy. I say regular person may have given up or quit. I've had some weird stories and crazy tales that you wouldn't think because number one, I don't have Parkinson's today. Number two, I'm no longer someone who's a caregiver, someone living with Parkinson. So I'm in a weird category in a way, not weird, but in reality, I'm former caregiver of someone who had Parkinson's, and I was shocked to realize that a lot of time I don't have a seat at the table, a conversation. A lot of organizations and foundations are great, but there's really no division for people like me. So I feel, and my experience is a lot of people, when they lose a loved one in Parkinson's, they, not saying they move on, but they get back to their life. They don't have to care anymore. I wish we had more for people like me because I think we need everyone together to keep fighting. Why would you just kind of close a book and move on when we still have people battling? And I always think my kids and their kids, I don't want them to have to go through this too.
yeah, we often talk about a fifth stage or sixth stage, depending on how we formulate it, of caregiving, where a person is moving away from the direct experience of caring because their person is no longer here. But what happens during that transition? Because many people aren't sure where to go with that. So I respect that, and I have experienced it myself in a couple of caregiving situations where suddenly my hands were empty.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, I remember that you just said how you had been an advocate for victims in your criminal justice career. Do you think there's something that prepares a caregiver, a family caregiver, best for entering that phase of life?
I think support and reaching out to others. Unfortunately, if you don't get the right people or right place, it's difficult. That's why togetherforsharon.com is 100% free and voluntary, and it lists sources around the world that people in every state can look up, find help and support. I didn't have that when I was going through it. The website's kind of taken a life of its own. We have several podcasts. It's almost like a TV channel. We also have, I've interviewed 1,000 people, written interviews, and around the world from Italy, Spain, France, Nova Scotia, even, and Iceland and Africa. And it's just shocking to know that people are battling around the world. Some of the areas they don't have any even doctors to help them. There's a lack of resources. So I try to build this place of safety and care where everybody can find support, reach out to each person. All 1,000 people have their own contact information. So it's just another resource. We don't, again, accept any money. I don't want any money. I just wish, I had my mother back, which is another interesting concept because obviously I can't get her back. So, why even bother? Some days I get that, email. And it's, again, I don't want anyone to feel alone when they're going through this or to have to go through what my mother did. She had a horrible struggle the last 4 years. She was someone who really liked to walk and was in good shape, ate healthy. But the last 4 years, it progressed so quickly, we don't even know why today. Every person's journey is different. But she went from walking to a cane for 2 years and a walker, wheelchair, then bedbound for 7 days. Parkinson's disease affects the motor skills and non-motor. So it's a horrible disease because it's not just a simple thing that we can all talk about that affects everyone the same. It's one of the fastest growing neurological diseases in the world, and it affects a lot of things from the gait of the person to stiffness. There's survived stages, which we wouldn't, again, have the time to go into everything, but it also affects things such as the tremors. Not everyone has them, but the famous actor Michael J. Fox is known for his incredible entertainment history in movies and TV, but also, if you've seen him, he has external tremors. Also, loss of smell, tough to even write with handwriting, things like trouble sleeping, trouble moving, walking, stiffness, and balance. Some of them we don't even like to talk about, which is constipation, low voice, facial masking, dizziness, stooping and hunching. And like I said, just because we're limited, it's just shocking how many things, because when you try to look at one symptom to help, then you have several others that kind of creep up. So it's an extremely difficult disease, and everyone needs more support.
Yeah, it really contributes, I think, to the isolation of the caregiver as well, because just listing all of those symptoms, it's breathtaking how many different concerns you have to watch for, be alert to, and try to mitigate somehow. And taking care of another person at that level of intensity really cuts into your self-care. Could you talk to me a little bit about how you handled that when you were caring for your mom, your own self-care?
It was hard because we were told by 15 doctors that you don't die of Parkinson's, you die with it. My mother was, in my opinion, young, so I never really thought she was not going to be with us. But I said to myself that if she isn't, then I have to try to be there to support her as much as I can. So I always say I broke the rule that you're supposed to take care of yourself first and then help your loved one, but I didn't do that because, again, I never knew how long I had. She also, unfortunately, at the end had delusions and hallucinations, which made it even more difficult. And she only felt safe when I was around. So that was complicated. And then, but you go through different stages. There's no way you could take a course, or even, I never dreamt I'd be a caregiver so young. I went through, sadness, depression, anxiety. I'm one of the people that my whole life I make a list of things and accomplish each one. You kind of check it off. But with my mother, we just felt like we failed each time. And, we didn't have the time to find a cure for her. She is and always will be my best friend. Every Sunday, she would sit with her three grandchildren and blow bubbles outside. And now I walk by the backyard and don't see that. So it's still kind of heartbreaking every week and still grieving. I do shows like yours and even my own things to help grieve. If it wasn't for you and all the people that follow me or like things or even share them, I don't think I'd be able to do any of this today. So again, I want to send thanks to you and your audience for just these incredible 20, 30 minutes.
You're so welcome. I really feel that caregivers are often isolated and they need a community, not just during the process of caregiving, but after as well, because people who have not survived the caregiving part, don't really know how to be helpful sometimes. So it is important for all of us to stick together. Could you tell me the top three things that you think a caregiver should be aware of or should anticipate and plan for if as they're entering caregiving for the first time? What would you recommend?
First is, again, even though I didn't follow it, their own health. That's very, very important because if you're not taking care of yourself, you might not be able to help others. The other one is really just, research. If you can find the right people to support you, that's very important. And third is become an advocate too, even though you might not have time. If you are out there advocating, you might find somebody else going through the same thing. So two and three kind of are in hand in hand. And I know when my mother wasn't doing well, I went to a little conference and got to learn a little bit and saw there were people out there like us also walking in, the walks or the 5K runs. I'm not as healthy as I used to be due to a lot of back issues, but I used to love going to those events because not only are you raising funds for the cure for every disease or any disease, you're also a part of the community and you're not alone. After COVID, we're also virtual. Even today, we are. I love it. But being there live is something even more special. And some of those events I will never forget.
Yeah, there's a certain solidarity, I'm sure, in walking with other people who are walking the same
Mm.
path with you. Who would be some of the important influences or forces in your life while you were being a caregiver? After mom, who would some of the other people be?
Yeah, I wrote in my book, and it's funny because a lot of times I talk more about Parkinson's and my mother, and I forgot about that I'm a caregiver because we never have time. But my wife and my children, I wouldn't have been able to publish books, to advocate today, or even be with you sitting here if it wasn't for their support. So they were big. Plus, my mother and my wife were best friends too. So that's not just rare, but important. And I always joke with my wife and wrote about it in this book, which is behind me, but it's a son's journey. And I picked this picture of my mother because that was when we danced at my wedding. And I think that was one of my favorite memories in my life, besides when I met my wife and had three children, because in that moment, in that dance, the mother and son dance, Parkinson's disease didn't exist and didn't matter, and it couldn't take those kind of memories from us. But I think I was lucky to have my wife. While I was helping my mother, I was running back and forth a lot and working. She would take care of the kids, and they all understood. And it's not an easy thing to do just yourself.
Yeah, it's a big impact on the family. Although it's maybe only one person who's doing all that work, the rest of the family is waiting for you to come home, and
Mhm.
that's often a big issue for families during the caregiving sequence. Are there other people who helped you along the way? Well, how did you feel, for example, about the medical community? Did you get a lot of support or assistance or information that was helpful?
Yeah, I didn't really have much help from family. I had more, I'd say, negativity, where some would want to do things and they don't know what they're doing. No offense to them, but it's, also doctors, not very good for Parkinson's disease, at least in my area. Went to 15 different ones. I remember one time even pulling one into a room and saying, "Is my mother going to live?" And they couldn't answer most of the questions. I respect the doctors trying, but I never understood why we have many Parkinson disease movement specialists, because they really can only prescribe medicine. I've heard horror stories. Well, they'll do that and say, "See you in 6 months." So that's not exactly helpful. And then we had to hire. We spent $12,000 a month towards the last year because we needed to hire around the clock care for my mother. I didn't want her to fall, but we had to fire about 10 companies, not just, so we went through 50, 60 aides before we found two who became like angels. But unfortunately, by then it was already way too late. But it's very hard to find people to care, to almost, it's sad to say, have a babysit when I couldn't be there. But and then you're trusting these people who are going to give her medicine at the right time, the right amount. So I look back today and they kept a journal. I don't even know if they did it right. But even sitting here now, again, she passed on 1/1/2020, ironically, that day. So she did luckily miss COVID and things, but I still don't know what happened to accelerate the disease, because there was a point where she was living independently, still driving, still able to shop, see her friends. And then, she went for a trial, and that night she came home. I got a call to rush over to her home at 2 a.m. And she was moving her furniture out of her home and said she thinks there's Nazis inside the home. And that was the night that really changed it all. And I never heard of delusions or hallucinations. We think that they drastically changed the medicine too much, and that caused a horrible reaction. And the hospital said she would have died that night. But in a sad way, that night was really the last end of her life. The last 4 years after that was a downward spiral, and everything I tried to do felt like it failed. And we couldn't save her, even though we tried. And I sit here again, looking back, there's not one thing, even with all the new research and that we've discovered, that we could have done differently, unfortunately.
Well, at least the look back gives you some peace knowing that you did everything that you could. However, I know certain diseases leave a person feeling like a chemistry experiment
Yeah.
because we really don't know what works or why it works for one person and not for another. So that's often a big frustration in terms of caregiving and watching a person so dear to you suffering. Um, So I remember when my dad was a physician, and when I was growing up, there were only a few diseases that he felt challenged by. Otherwise, he felt like he could fight everything, and Parkinson's and cancer were two of them. If he had to say a patient was suffering from one of those, he would always say it in hushed tones, and we knew in the family that meant there wasn't going to be much of an answer. And that was a long time ago, so we've come a long way with cancer. But it seems that Alzheimer's and Parkinson's and a few others are still great mysteries. And if the treatment they have doesn't work, a lot of doctors lose interest in you, and that's when a caregiver is really challenged to try to figure out what else to do. Did you find you met the hospital at home movement? It sounds like you tried to care for your mom at home for as long as possible. Did you have to do medical treatments at home at any point?
Yeah, towards the last year, they started something new in Florida and was actually long-term hospice, which was not always the best, but it did bring real nurses in to help. It had a 24-hour hotline if we had an emergency, which was great. Also, they would help refill medicines and kind of teach us a little. But the negative side is they don't allow or believe in physical therapy. And as you know, at least with the movement disorders, the only thing someone has is hope, and when you take away physical therapy, they lose that, and then it's too late. So that was a very tough thing for my mother to hear that they wouldn't help her anymore. Sometimes she couldn't physically do things, but as long as you have physical therapy, you can still try and feel a little better about yourself. But so it was like a win-lose situation, and it was a very tough, probably the toughest year of my life, her last year. So. I don't have a lot of great to say. Also, the costs are ridiculous. Most people don't have long-term disability because they don't realize they're going to be, declared having Parkinson's. So we had to pay a tremendous amount of money. She didn't really get to ever retire. We bought our brand new home, thought she was going to live on this little beautiful quiet lake and see her grandkids grow up. But a year after, that was it. She didn't even get to enjoy it. So, and I'll never forget and I had one of the hardest days also was cleaning out our home, which no person should ever have to do that young. But uh, so I remember throwing out five of those huge black contractor bags of medicines. It was like shocking that was so much medicine in her house and she was taking. So even today, again, I doubt a lot of the people and what they prescribed, how much it was prescribed. And like you said, it seems a little bit like it was just a science experiment gone wrong. So,
Yeah. Were there people along the way during the care journey who were inspirational to you, who helped you get through this?
really, just my wife again, and that's it. Because without her, I don't think I would have made it. She always would bring. My mother loved again being with the family, and even though my three kids were young, screaming and crying and shouting, we built a little room in her house. They're called the playroom, where we're really clean people and orderly. I was brought up like kind of semi-military and police, so I am really, strict and like to have things at least not chaos in the house. And we allowed that one room to be chaos just for fun. And she would just, even when she was very sick in the wheelchair, we'd put her in the room with them. She would just watch them and smile. So that was really what got us through the toughest days. But not really, unfortunately, anyone. That brings a different topic that's important. She didn't have a husband, so it was just really me and my brother, but who didn't really, he couldn't help her. So it was just me alone. And I'm a boy, a man and helping a female, even though it's my mother, is not always easy. It brings a whole world of other challenges for another show, being a male caregiver. And a lot of male caregivers, there's an epidemic that they aren't either speaking out or stepping up. We swore at her, and I'm glad that we didn't put her in a home. But there was days where I said to myself and my wife, we have to go look at a home because I couldn't handle it. Because with the delusions, hallucinations towards the end, she was calling the police. She thought all the caregivers were harming her, so I had to install video cameras because I believed everything she said. She's very honest, and my whole life we always told each other the truth, and I didn't want her to be in trouble. But I knew if I put her in a home, I wouldn't be able to see or know anything, so I kept her home, but I had to monitor things all the time. Thankfully, no one really harmed her at all. No one did. I did see one that neglected when she woke up because she didn't sleep much she called for help and no one came, so we fired the person the next morning.
Mhm.
It was again like a revolving door where we had to keep looking for companies and people, and just horrible. Every experience I had was just terrible. Again, until we met the great last two people, but again, it was like the last month, so she finally felt safe. When they were with her and she felt safe, I could live and do my own thing, work, and be at least sane for a moment. In my book, A Son's Journey, I put literally the last year of her life and my caregiving by times and date stamp. And you'll hear the calls or you'll read the calls that we had and what I was thinking. It's almost like I had a journal the last year and I couldn't share it till I put this book together because I wanted people to know what it's like. Sometimes it's hard to read because you don't want to know what might be coming, but I thought it was important to put out there. Can you believe there's not a book? And I always challenge everyone to write me if I'm wrong, but as of today, for 4 or 5 years, there isn't one other book in the world. I'm talking about the whole world from a son who lost his mother due to Parkinson's. So this was needed. And that's why I wrote a lot of these books. I wrote one on police and Parkinson's. I'm a cop, and there's not enough, if anything, for people understanding, training to help awareness with police and Parkinson's. And again, each of these topics is a different show, but it's a movement disorder. So if someone has Parkinson's, they're pulled over by the police, and the police officer isn't aware of what's going on. And this is the book, Policing and Parkinson, but it's going to end very bad, and that's what I'm hoping never happens. So sometimes in our society, you're probably aware, and everyone listening, there's just not enough attention till something very, very bad happens. And then all of a sudden, everyone listened. Like, example is autism. In law enforcement, no one really understood autism or cared. And then all of a sudden, an officer in some state or city shot and killed someone with autism. And then they added the training for autism in every academy and all different things. So it's a shame that I hope, no one with Parkinson's ever has this. But if they read this book, they'll be able to understand what to do and how to avoid some of those situations.
Yeah, it's an let's say the niche you don't want to have established, but that's exactly what you did, it sounds like. And I've read that caregiving gender-wise is about 60-40, so 60% women and about 40% men. So men are creeping up there, as you said, in terms of statistics. And there are a lot of sons who take care of their mothers, and they're often unsung. And sometimes people don't want to write a book when it's over because
Yeah.
they need to move on with their lives. So it's really important that you did.
Yeah.
And one of the other things you mentioned, you didn't say it this way, but to me it sounds like, and it felt like when I was a caregiver, you almost need to try to buy another family member or purchase the services of a person who's like a family member to do caregiving, because you want someone who will think of things the way you do, who knows your parent or your sibling or whoever you're caring for the way you do. And that's an impossible dream. Eventually, you may find people who are almost there, but you really can't ever get the exact help that you need. And that's why I think a lot of people resist looking for help, because they're tired of training people. They don't really have time to do it well. And if the person doesn't fall naturally into the role, it's going to take a lot more time than people have available. So that's the awkward thing. And as you said, sometimes family members can't. Sometimes they won't, but sometimes they really just can't fit it into their lives. So it often falls to one person to do. So it sounds like we still have quite a ways to go to solve this caregiving dilemma. Could you tell us now about where people can find you and your uh, charity for Sharon on the internet, where we can find you in the world so that more people can become alert to the issues that are raised when a person has Parkinson? I think that police book that you wrote, that has to be a jewel for people to be able to have access to that kind of information. But if you could sum up where we can find you and what kinds of resources you're giving, that would be tremendous help to my listeners.
Yeah, I'm on probably every single social media in existence, which I don't know how because it's just me. And but it's Together for Sharon. It's spelled out together, FORSHARON.com. Everything again is free on the site. one way to support us is if you go to the store under books, you can purchase any of the books, and it's getting big, unfortunately. And I'd rather close the whole shop down, stop this all, and say there's a cure. But until then, we realize can't stop yet. We still have work to do, still have people to reach. Just the other day, I received an email on TikTok, which I never thought I'd be on, thanking me for all that I'm doing. And those are the kind of emails that keep me going, even though some days are tough. I have my own medical issues and I want to give up. But appreciate today, tomorrow, and I think together the future is bright because of you, the show, and everyone listening. And I have a little statement I always say at the end of my show. We love you all. We support you. We care about a lot of you, and you're never alone. I, along with your incredible guest, our incredible host here today, will advocate for you. And together, I feel voices are so much stronger. Now we close my show with them just getting started, because although I'm not just getting started, on those tough days, like we just mentioned, where I feel like I've done enough and I hit a ceiling and I realize that maybe that's it. Then I meet you and all your listeners, and then maybe someone new who just got diagnosed and they feel alone. And then I realize that I can't stop, because until there's a cure at everybody's doorsteps around the world, we still have to keep fighting together and always be side by side with everyone out there who needs some support. So I'm just, again, so grateful for your time and friendship. And to all your listeners, we send our love.
That is so wonderful to hear. And I feel like we have a partnership here on both sides of the equation, that there are conditions that we need to take a closer look at and start putting some more energy behind resolving for people. And also, we need to take better care of the caregivers themselves. So I want to thank you, George, for being my guest today. We are going to put all of your links into the show notes so people will be able to find you. And I hope they will pay close attention to your books, which are tremendously helpful. So I'll close by asking you if you have anything else you'd like to tell listeners before we end our interview today.
Only that some days are tough, others are even worse, but you have to keep your head up, cherish all the good moments. Don't fight with each other, because it's not worth it. Now I look back, we have a quick joke, funny story, but every Sunday when we did get together with family, we would all argue, like literally fight over what kind of food to eat. And it was like, I've been talking about fights, like horrible, like screaming. And then it's like now Sunday comes and it's silence and it's sad. And I actually miss those terrible arguments. So just like I said, always keep your head up, try to keep smiling, and know that you're doing your best and that you're not alone, because that's how I felt. And I hope through the books, through the advocacy, that's really what keeps us going. Also, if you go to togetherforsharon.com, scroll down on the main page, the little, looks like a Christmas tree, but it's a tree link thing. But if you click that, you'll be able to go to all my exact accounts on Facebook, Instagram, X, everywhere, and I'll add you all right back, because again, we just have to keep, if we even reach one person today, we might have changed our world for the better.
That's it. One person each day, and we might have a remarkable community of people who are thriving instead of wondering where the help is going to come from. So thank you so much, George, for being my guest today.
Thank you.
Hope to see you soon. Bye, everyone. Thank you for joining me today on the Caregiving Secret. You can dive deeper by picking up a copy of my pamphlet, Non-Negotiables for Caregivers. Go to my website, DeborahGreenhut.com, and click on the link for Non-Negotiables for Caregivers. Until next time, keep sharing, keep caring, and remember, you're not alone on this journey.